Hello, I'm David Mitchell from New Zealand. I'm sorry that I cannot be there in person to talk to you today, but I have prepared a brief video to give you some idea of where I'm coming from. First of all, I'm very proud to be associated with the ECO-in project, the ecological approach to inclusion, this multi-country study that's nearing its completion, and I've been associated with it right from the beginning. I'm going to talk very briefly about my perception of what inclusive education is, and I'd ask you to begin with to just hold up your hand and look at the range of fingers that you have. Each one is different, each one serves a different purpose, and I'd like you to think of those fingers as representing the diversity of children, of learners that we have in our schools all around the world. There are some that are boys and girls, there are some who come from very poor backgrounds, some from very rich backgrounds. There are those who come with different religions, those with come from different cultural groups, and then there are those who come with different levels of ability. Some have disabilities. Now, if that represents the diversity of the children that we are required to teach in our classrooms, I would ask you, what does this glove represent? And if I put the glove on, what does it represent? If the fingers all represent the children who have diverse backgrounds and needs, the glove to me represents inclusive education. What do I mean by that? It means, as I say here, inclusive education at its very basis, very basic idea, is education that fits every child and their particular needs and backgrounds. So that's my brief, very tight definition of inclusion being education that fits. Now, I want to tell you now about what I've called the magic formula for inclusive education. And you will see I've got inclusive education equals V plus P. There are 5 things beginning with S, with A, I'm sorry, and then there's an S and an R and a L. What do those actually mean? And I'm arguing that for inclusive education to really work, we need all of these elements of the formula in practice. First of all, we need everybody in the school system, well, particularly in the school, but also those who are in administrative roles and even political roles who administer education. And we would hope that they have a shared vision on what inclusive education is and that they are committed to implementing it fully at whatever level that they are working. Then we come to the next element, and this is one where I think many people just stop and say inclusive education simply means placing children with special needs, in this case, into regular classes. The placement. Now that's important, very important, but I'm arguing it's not sufficient. So what do we mean by placement? We mean children who have a range of different needs, who are placed in their regular school and in a regular classroom. And by the way, I would go on and say placement in mixed ability groups within a classroom as well. So that's the second part of my formula. The third part is this one of the A's, and that is the necessity to have an adapted curriculum. Clearly, we can't have every child learning exactly the same content in a classroom. that content should be adjusted to their interests, should be adjusted to their abilities, and so on. So we need to have an adapted curriculum taking place in the same classroom, and it is possible to have 2 or 3, perhaps even more, different kinds of curriculum simultaneously being pursued in a classroom. The next A is if we have an adapted curriculum, that means that various children will be following different curricula. That means that we must adapt the assessment too, to reflect the fact that they are learning different material and so on. So we've got to adapt the assessment. One that I have studied in particular is the need to adapt our teaching. This is the third of the 5 A's, adapted teaching. I'm particularly an advocate on universal design for learning. I'm also an advocate of mixed ability group and cooperative group teaching. But there are many, many other adaptations that we need to make in our teaching to bring about inclusive education. The next one is that we must clearly have acceptance, that children with special educational needs are accepted by teachers, by other students, by parents, and the community. They are accepted as being legitimately part of our education system and playing a full role in that system. Then we come to the next A, working through our magic formula. The next A is that there must be access. A couple of points I would make about access is that we're talking about physical access. Obviously, a school must have access to classrooms through ramps, and there must be sufficient access within a classroom to allow wheelchairs, for example. But above all, we need to make sure that they can access education. They can access the curriculum. Then we come to the next point about the magic formula, and this I've argued is that teachers need to have support from other professionals, psychologists, social workers, speech and language therapists, and people who can guide them in adapting their curriculum and adapting their teaching to suit all children. The next element in our magic formula is that there must be resources. And by the way, I think that if we have inclusive education and compare it with special education, particularly in special schools, the resources that we need to implement inclusive education are no greater than those that would be used for those children if they were in special schools or in special classes. So we do need resources, and that might mean technological resources. Certainly it means resources in terms of additional personnel to assist in the classroom and so on. And finally, in my magic formula, we come to the role that all of you people in the audience today will be playing, and I hope will be playing in the future, and that is the leadership that is required to bring about inclusive education. We need a very firm, enlightened, well-informed leadership provided by school principals and those who are administering education, but also leadership provided by the teachers in the regular school.